It's just... Jared, I might be having a heart attack. I need to lie down, folks. No, don't call an ambulance. It's too expensive. Call a cab. I have a coupon in my wallet. Don't go in my wallet, Jared. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Isn't this suit just gorgeous? Look at it. It is stunning. I mean, unfortunately, that's not what we're here to talk about today, but I thought we might as well praise this beautiful suit.
Actually, I don't like the rainy suit. I really fucking hate it, you fucking insufferable fuck.
It's my opinion. Settle down. Oh, and the rest of the video is going to be my opinion too. So what is the topic of today's video? If it's not to praise that suit, that beautiful, I'm going to stop. Right, so today's video we are going to be talking about the Spider-Man PS4 DLCs, which in my opinion haven't quite lived up to the main game's quality, which is to be expected from DLCs. My lip sync's off ever so slightly. It's very marginal and it's really irking me. So you're probably wondering, what am I on about? Why am I not so happy with the DLCs? And it's not that the DLCs are bad. It's more to do with the fact that what's provided doesn't feel like enough. And as a result, the City That Never Sleeps chapters, The Heist, Turf Wars, and Silver Lining didn't really come off too well. And here's why. But please do bear in mind that this is my opinion, and I cannot promise that this video will be spoiler free, so if you haven't played these DLCs and want to and don't want it spoiled, then it's best that you don't watch. Also, if you're an oversensitive dickhead, I'm giving you fair warning that I'm going to give my opinion, so there's that. No matter how many times I give the opinions warning, people are always going to be upset at my opinion. I don't know why I bothered. So my main grievance with the DLCs isn't from the quality of what's presented, but the lack of quality content presented. Of course, each DLC lasts a couple of hours, but if you cut out all the pointless side stuff and the tedious missions, it goes down to about an hour's worth of story content. It's quality story content, don't get me wrong. There's interesting stuff there, and of course, Spider-Man in this game is fantastic. But what alarmed me was that it felt like the DLCs were handled to a lower quality than the actual game, which shouldn't necessarily be an issue considering that the DLC is a short little bit of story content on top of the game that's already there. Surely to Christ you can put in the effort and make that DLC, for what it is, the best that it can possibly be. But an hour's worth of worthy content per DLC, and in between every single mission, being torn out of the immersion of that story and being forced to do a screwball challenge, yeah, nah, that bit didn't appeal to me.
I'm gonna keep looking into this Simcaria story. It's...
Oh, fuck's sake! Oh, fuck off. Does she have to exist? The fact that you'll get into it, it'll get proper interesting, and then suddenly it's like, fucking screwballs here to fuck you in the ass with new challenges. Oh yeah, fucking hell. Wow. Shut up. Like I said, my main issue with the DLCs, all three of them are quite guilty of this, it's not the quality of the actual story content that's provided, but it's its use of filler and mindless side content to try to prolong the length of the DLC a little bit. See, it took me like 2 hours to finish each DLC separately, which is 3 in the bundle that you pay for. So that's 6 hours in total, and of those 6 hours, at least half of it felt like pointless filler, or prolonged boss fights that just took far too long. And when I say that, I'm talking about both the Hammerhead boss fights. Of the two, I feel as if lazy boss fights are more forgivable though, so, you know what, it's probably just my playstyle. Judging from your gameplay, you're not actually very good at the game, so how would you know how long the boss fights are? I have seen this comment so many times. I mean, I manage okay, so I really don't understand why I get that comment so often when I review games and criticise the gameplay, which I'm not actually doing. It's a shame for the 3 hours of actual decent content in these 3 DLCs. I mean, Turf Wars was probably the exception. Let's say in the 2 hours of decent content in this DLC, it was actually pretty decent. So if there was more of that quality stuff as opposed to all the filler that's being thrown in, I feel as if the DLCs would have been significantly better. Besides the lackluster quantity of story content, the DLCs on the whole aren't bad, alright? They're not the most amazing thing ever, but it's basically just the same as the main game with some new suits. The suits are pretty nice, but it being the same as the main game. With regards to side content, it does get a bit boring because we did experience that in the main game, so we've done it before. There's not really much new here besides from sneaking around a bar in a little drone for about 15 minutes, which wasn't the most interesting thing I've ever done either. And I feel as if one thing that does need critiquing about the main game and the side content too is a lot of the side content is just mindless fun. It's fun, but it's mindless, and mindless fun can get very tedious, and when for side content that's all that's being offered, it's just not worth doing. So if they wind up doing more DLCs, or more likely wind up doing a sequel, considering they've set up the Miles storyline, which is another critique I'm about to come to in a minute, but before we get to that, they've set it up, so there'll be a sequel at some point. I'm not sure of it, but I reckon so. When it comes to that, the side content's got to be more meaningful in the main game and its DLCs. In this game and its DLCs, it's not that it's not meaningful, there is some meaningful side content there, but a lot of it is just filler there, mindless fun to have in the open world. And for the most part it works, but when it's in the DLCs you get 2 hours of main content and you want to get your money's worth, and all you have is things that you can just run around doing that don't do much for you. It doesn't feel right. So what could make for more meaningful content? Well, one thing would be side storylines, not anything too major, but things that make you invested in that little mission. Still keep the small time random events that you can run into in the world as you can see on screen, because those are quite fun. They're mindless, but they're fun and they don't get in the way. And they're just there as little things to do as you're going through the world, which is actually a really good thing. I mean, it can all be kept, even the fucking screwball challenges if you're so inclined, because as long as it's not a substitute for actual content, it's not in the way. But as for the type of side content that the DLCs could have done with, and the main game could have done with more of, is actual engaging side story arcs, things that kept you invested from start to finish. Like the Tombstone story arc, for example. Wasn't the most glamorous thing come the end, but that sort of model is what I'm on about. And I mean, you can put a little payoff at the end of a screwball challenge in the last DLC, but that doesn't change the fact that getting there was completely unengaging. And if Marvel's Spider-Man gets a sequel or more DLC in the future, then these are things that definitely need considering. Now I think it's time we got on to criticising the Miles progression, which is one of the most disappointing things about the DLCs. What do I mean, you ask? Well, it was all done over a fucking phone call. We don't see Miles until the very fucking end of Silver Lining, and then it's only a post-credits scene, which is pretty cool in itself, but throughout the 3 DLCs, we see Miles go through some training, but we don't see it on screen. It's all relayed to us over the phone, as we're swinging through the world between missions. Now, as much as it would have been great to see all of that, I do get that they want to save Miles' storyline for a potential sequel later on down the line if they're going to do that. And I think they're going to have to, because they left us wanting more. That's something that needs to be elaborated, and with the post-credits scene in Silver Lining being Miles learning how to use the web shooters, I reckon that's something that we'll see eventually. But in the DLC itself, if you look at it from an isolated perspective, it's quite disappointing. But at the same time, I do look forward to seeing more of Miles' development if we do get to see it eventually. Now overall, I don't really see this DLC as much of a failing on Insomniac Games' part, or a mishandling per se. I just feel as if it's in the right direction. Like, the rest of the game was fucking fantastic, like the main game itself. That was golden stuff. And the DLCs were just a bit too small to reach the same levels of quality that the main game did, because there's only so much you can do with a couple of hours worth of story content, a lot of which is filler, and side content that you don't really put too much time into, because it's quite short. Each DLC is quite short, understandably so. There's 3 of them, and they're all made for like one bundle to be released quickly after the game. So it all makes sense as to why they're so short, but that's also why they're a lot lower in quality than the main game was, in my opinion. So in the end of the day, my problem with the DLCs wasn't that they didn't have quality content in them, because they actually did. My problem was with the quantity of the quality content that was there. It wasn't as massive as, say, the main game was, and ultimately it brought the DLCs down, and that's why I'm not such a huge fan of them, and they were a bit disappointing at times. I don't dislike them, I don't hate them, but they weren't the greatest experience I've ever had in a DLC or a game, and they weren't even close to that, but at the same time they weren't close to terrible either. They were like mediocre, and they could have been better very easily had they not been so quickly pushed out the door and worked on for longer to make them bigger and fill that with more quality content. And then there wouldn't have been any need for filler and things that brought the DLC down. They could have been there in the background and it would have been fine. But, you know, if you like those DLCs, that's good for you, man. Like, I'm not against that. I'm not against the DLCs, and you're allowed to have your own opinion, so please don't kill me. But anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, be sure to go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I would really appreciate that. And if you want to engage our community, then go ahead and join the community Discord. There will be a link in the description. Everybody's welcome. And I will see you all very soon with another video at some point.